It is the world's largest island, yet it feels like a different planet. A vast, frozen continent in waiting, holding secrets under miles of ice. But this is no empty wasteland. It is a strategic fortress of ice sitting at the top of the world, a keystone of global geography. Its location is a geopolitical grand prize, a sentinel overlooking the Arctic, positioned squarely between North America and Eurasia. For centuries, it was a remote curiosity. Today, as the polar ice recedes and new shipping lanes emerge, Greenland is becoming one of the most critical territories on Earth. Control Greenland, and you control the northern passages. You gain unparalleled access to untapped natural resources and a military vantage point, second to none. This immense power has not gone unnoticed. The United States, more than any other nation, has long coveted this icy giant. The desire is not new. It's a recurring theme in American foreign policy. In 1946, as the Cold War's first shadows began to fall, President Harry Truman saw Greenland's immense strategic value. He secretly offered Denmark $100 million in gold, the equivalent of over $1.5 billion today, to purchase the island outright. The goal was to secure a permanent bulwark against potential Soviet aggression over the North Pole. Decades later, in 2019, the idea resurfaced under President Donald Trump, who publicly floated the idea of buying Greenland, comparing it to a large real estate deal. The motivations were similar: strategic positioning against rivals like Russia and China, and the promise of vast, untapped mineral wealth. But both times, the answer from Denmark was a swift, unequivocal no. The Danish government, and more importantly, the Greenlandic people, made it clear: Greenland is not for sale. It is an autonomous country within the Kingdom of Denmark, with its own government, its own culture, and its own aspirations for the future. The notion of being bought and sold was dismissed as a colonial absurdity. But what if the United States didn't take no for an answer? In a world of escalating geopolitical tensions, where access to the Arctic is paramount, what if a future administration decided that diplomatic patience had run its course? What if the U.S. military decided to simply take Greenland? On paper, it sounds like a simple operation for the world's strongest military, a swift, decisive action to secure a vital national interest. The Danish military is capable but small, and Greenland itself is virtually undefended. A forced annexation could seem, to a certain kind of strategic thinker, like a logical, if drastic, solution. But in reality, an American invasion of Greenland would be the worst strategic mistake in modern American history. It would trigger a cascade of diplomatic, economic, and military consequences that would cripple the United States on the world stage, shatter its most important alliances, and achieve the exact opposite of its intended goal. It would be an act of self-sabotage on a global scale. Here is why. Before a single soldier could set foot on Greenlandic soil, the first and perhaps most insurmountable problem isn't the ice, it's the treaties. While Greenland enjoys a high degree of self-governance through its home rule government, its defense and foreign policy remain the responsibility of the Kingdom of Denmark. This isn't just a historical footnote, it's a critical legal reality. An armed incursion into Greenland, for any reason, is legally indistinguishable from an invasion of Copenhagen itself. And that simple fact triggers a cascade of consequences that would unravel the entire post-World War II global order. Because Denmark is not just any European nation. It is a founding member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. Forged in the ashes of the Second World War, NATO was designed with a single overarching purpose: to provide collective security against an outside aggressor. The entire structure is built on a promise of mutual defense. A promise so powerful it has deterred major conflict in Europe for over 70 years. An American invasion of Greenland would force this cornerstone of Western security into an impossible, self-destructive paradox. It would trigger the ultimate diplomatic nightmare. Is the heart of the NATO alliance. It states unequivocally that an attack on one member is an attack on all. This provision has only been invoked once in history, by the United States after the September 11th attacks. America's allies answered the call, sending troops to fight alongside the US in Afghanistan. Now, imagine the scenario in reverse. If the US invades Greenland, it is, by the letter of the treaty it helped write, committing an act of war against Denmark, and by extension, it is technically declaring war on its own alliance. The moment the invasion begins, the North Atlantic Council would convene in Brussels. Denmark would formally invoke Article 5. What happens next? Every other member, from the UK and France to Germany and Canada, would be treaty-bound to come to Denmark's aid. Would they declare war on the United States? Perhaps not militarily, at least not at first. But the diplomatic and economic fallout would be instantaneous and catastrophic. The US would instantly find itself isolated, facing a unified bloc of its closest partners. Sanctions, asset freezes, and the severing of intelligence sharing would be just the beginning. The Western Alliance, the most successful military pact in history, would collapse overnight, not from an external threat, but from an unthinkable act of self-sabotage. The world's most powerful nation would become its most prominent pariah, all for a territory it once tried to buy for $100 million. But here is the massive irony in this entire hypothetical scenario. The United States doesn't actually need to invade Greenland to secure its military interests there. Why? Because in a very real sense, they are already there. This is Patuxent Space Force Base, known for decades as Thule Air Base. Located over 750 miles north of the Arctic Circle, it is the United States military's northernmost installation. Established during the height of the Cold War, its original mission was to provide a staging ground for long-range bombers and to detect incoming Soviet missiles over the North Pole. Today, its mission is more critical than ever. Patuxent is the crown jewel of America's early warning system, its powerful ballistic missile. Early Warning System, or BMEWS, can detect intercontinental ballistic missiles thousands of miles away, providing precious minutes of warning for the North American continent. It also hosts advanced satellite control and communication systems, making it an irreplaceable node in the global network of the U.S. Space Force. And all of this operates on Greenlandic soil, but not by force. It operates with the full permission of the Kingdom of Denmark, Greenland's sovereign partner. This is where the logic of an invasion completely collapses. The entire legal framework for the American presence at Patuxent is a 1951 defense treaty between the United States and Denmark. By launching an invasion, the U.S. would be unilaterally violating the very agreement that grants them access in the first place. The immediate consequence would be undeniable. Denmark, as a sovereign nation and NATO ally, would be forced to declare the treaty void. They would have no choice but to formally evict all U.S. forces from Greenlandic territory. The strategic cost would be catastrophic. In a single, self-inflicted blow, the United States would lose its most vital Arctic outpost. The BMEW's radar would go dark. The satellite uplinks would be severed. America's ability to detect a missile attack coming over the polar route would be effectively blinded, creating a massive, dangerous gap in its national defense. The very asset an invasion would supposedly seek to secure would be the first thing it destroys. If NATO fractures, who wins? Not Washington. Russia and China would watch as the U.S. destroys its own network of allies. U.S. bases across Europe, from Germany to Italy, would likely be blockaded or evicted. The U.S. global power projection would evaporate. The economic sanctions from the European Union alone would trigger a global depression unlike anything we've seen. Invading Greenland isn't about defeating a small Danish defense force. It's about fighting the geography, the economy, and your own best friends. In the game of geopolitics, some territories are better left as friends than conquered as enemies. Thanks for watching. What other hypothetical invasions should we analyze? Let us know in the comments.